Hey guys, what's up? Excoundrel here. I apologise for having been absent for almost 2 weeks. I have had a very bad illness. I've been out of the works for about a week and a half now. But I am back, just about. I'm still a little bit ill, so if you hear me cough during this video, I do apologise. But I'm back, I'm ready to start getting back to videos, and I thought, let's start with something that you're all going to want to see, which is the Update 3.2 Best Picks. And already, straight off the bat, we are seeing the new hero Meline in the mid lane. Meline is super strong right now. Honestly, Meline is a very, very, very good mid laner. Despite not having great ratios, the fact that she has got so many abilities makes her work so nicely with Aftershock. You can also play her less Aftershock reliant and play her with an alternating current, which gives her more standard basic attack damage. But this build right here, the Aftershock into Dragon's Eye, into Clockwork, into Broken Myth, is a very, very good build. If you're constantly switching between your two forms to proc the Aftershock, you can do a lot of damage. Okay, this wonderful lady did not get changed on Update 3.2, which remains to put her at the very top of the tier lists. She is very, very good. Honestly, if you're not playing Celeste or you don't know how to play Celeste, you should be. Eve of Harvest, not an item that many people are picking up anymore, so that's kind of been subbed out of the build. And now you're seeing more sort of Spellfire or Dragon's Eye first. I was told either Spellfire or Dragon's Eye first, and then if you need a Spellfire later, you go it last, or if you need a Dragon's Eye later, you go it last. But that's what I've been told with her specific build. No changes with Varia. She had some very minor changes in 3.2, and honestly, she's still stuck right at the top of being a very, very good mid-lane mage. She scales a bit worse, but realistically, it is almost impossible to tell the differences that have come because of her changes. Again, I would probably wager away from Eve of Harvest now for Varia and go towards the Clockwork Broken Myth build. But again, she is an alternating current focus build. She does work really well with attack speed, so keep her in that point. And finally, Scarf. Now, this will be contentious because a lot of people will say Scarf or Samuel. Samuel did get nerfed on the most recent update. Now, he is still very good. He's almost sort of in this level, and I think Samuel and Scarf are very, very good either way. So this could have very easily have been Samuel. If you want to play someone that isn't on this list and you want to consider a mid laner that isn't in this 4, I would suggest Samuel. But Scarf overall is in a good space right now. If you can hit that initial burn with his goop, you can hit them really hard. So I think Scarf's in a great place, and I think he counters a lot of mid lane tier 1 mid laners right now anyway. This will be probably the most contentious part of my video. The fact that, honestly, not many of the junglers have changed. Cruel is still really strong right now. You can build him with that Tension Bow Breaking Point build, or you can build with the Poison Shiv Breaking Point. Again, he's not a super aggressive jungler. He really only needs 1 or 2 items to shine, and then you're going to go full tank after that, but you can obviously always consider a Shiver Steel somewhere in the build because it works well for Cruel, even though it got nerfed moderately recently. I'm going to keep Grumpjaw in here because I think Grumpjaw, despite the changes on 3.2, is a very good solo queue jungler. I think he's quite underrated. I think a lot of people maybe don't give him the attention that he deserves. And I think he's a great solo queue jungler that still works with the same builds, and I think can snowball games really hard. And in solo queue, snowballing often leads to very early wins. So I think Grumpjaw is a great jungler. I think he is a good early game jungler, and he can snowball things really nicely. This is the one that is going to potentially divide my viewers between North America and Europe, which is why I'm going to add it with a caveat. Although we can see Koshka here, I think we also need to pay respect to the fact that Alpha is very heavily prioritized, and they have similar build paths. Alpha is very heavily prioritized in Europe, whereas Koshka seems to be a more North American pick. So while Koshka and Alpha, I think, are similar power levels, you'll notice that a lot of people in Europe prefer Alpha, a lot of people in North America tend to swing towards Koshka. It's personal preference, they're both incredibly good junglers. So I kind of snuck an extra jungler into my top 4 and made it a top 5. Apologies. So, we're also going to include Baptiste here. Now, I'm going to add a caveat to this as well. Whilst I've included a CP build path, he is generally better as a weapon power jungler. That is Poison Shiv into Breaking Point into defense. Not Metal Jacket specifically, just into defense. You can build his classic CP build with the Shattered Glass into Clockwork into Broken Myth. It still works perfectly fine. But honestly, he is just better as a weapon power jungler right now, and he counters a lot of the kind of meta heroes at this point in time. So I think Baptiste is a very, very good weapon power jungler. Again, I'm not going to separate side lanes into top and bot right now because in solo queue you don't often see that much meta. We're starting to get there, but until we have a defined way of separating our lanes without that annoying reflection, I think I'm just going to keep it as side lanes. Vox will remain in the meta. Generally, you're starting to see Vox more CP, weapon power than CP, but you can still build CP Vox. But honestly, you generally tend to see him more of that weapon power build. And you can see there, Poison Shiv, Breaking Point. A lot of people go Tension Bow. Sara Blade is also good. And if you're really feeling like you don't need those defensive items, you can also go double Tyrant's Monocle. Rona still incredibly strong, and she will remain strong for, I think, as long as she is in this current state at this time. Again, her build path hasn't changed much either. She's got great matchups against a lot of other laners, and honestly, still just a very solid pick in general. So yes, I think Rona is a good pick, and she'll remain a good pick on 3.2. No major changes happened to her to sort of put her back out of this tier list, so I'm going to keep Rona where she is. Another pick that people may consider is a little bit odd is Gwen, and Gwen is still going to remain in my picks because she hasn't changed much and honestly still remains a very good snowbally laner. Gwen is one of those picks that if you can, if you can get an early lead, which is very, very possible with Gwen, you can snowball the game in your favor very quickly. So I still think Gwen is a great laner. I wouldn't recommend her CP build path, but I'm putting it in there for interest. Her weapon power build path is much easier to execute on. I have seen some Serpent Mask based Gwen builds, but honestly the Tension Bow based build path is just better. Just better in my opinion. Got a hiccuping in the middle of the video, apologies. This is one that's new to the side lanes, and I think Baptiste in general is in a really strong position right now. He counters a lot of other side lane matchups, including Taka and Rona, for instance. So I think that the Poison Shiv Breaking Point weapon power build is really, really good in the side lane for Baptiste, and I think he's very good in the bot lane specifically. So yeah, I would definitely consider Baptiste if you're a side laner right now, or a bot or a top lane main, as I think he is very good into a lot of good matchups. I actually replaced Jewel with Baptiste, despite the fact that Jewel got a buff on the previous patch. She is still quite hard to make work, so I've decided to remove her out, as not a lot of pros. North American pros are kind of playing a bit of Jewel, but Europe less so. Reza still in a very strong position, still works incredibly well with Aftershock. His build path hasn't changed much. Honestly, eat your heart out on Reza. He is a great hero. I would potentially recommend going Bruker Myth second over what I've written here. I would just test out and see how that feels, but the build path you can see with the Dragon's Eye still works very well, and I think Reza is all round a great hero still. Blackfeather, again, hasn't received many changes. I still think is a great weapon power and CP side laner. I think his CP build path is probably slightly stronger unless you're building the weapon power build path specifically to deal with a hero. So the Aftershock CP build path for Blackfeather is very, very good. And again, one of those items that you could consider is Spellfire. It is still very, very good at this point in time. I still think Spellfire is a great item, so still keep your eyes on using that. It's more of if you need it or not now as opposed to anything else, but I still think Spellfire is good. Idris is an interesting one because a lot of people would say Idris mid lane for CP, whereas he doesn't quite, I think, stack up to the other mid laners just in terms of getting to his breaking point, plus the fact that he's been nerfed on the previous update. A lot of North Americans are playing Idris in the jungle and kind of going hybrid to unlock both of his divergent paths. But I think Idris in general is a very solid side laner that scales up nicely with CP still, and also can be built as a weapon power side laner in certain scenarios also. This is a pick that a lot of you will probably contest because of the scale of the nerfs that Taka got. Taka is still a good side laner. He's still a great 1v1 hero. The very core fundamentals of Taka's kit that makes him good are still there. He still works so well with cooldown reduction. Kaku is still a very annoying ability, and the changes really mean that you have to go more aggressive in your build path. Stormcrown is something that you need to consider because otherwise Taka's wave clear is really bad. But honestly, if you go more aggressive on your build path in Taka, you'll notice that he's probably still just as good, but is more squishy and can't go like Aegis Metal Jacket first and win the game. So Taka is still a good side laner, but needs CP to work. Moving on to captain picks, This is an interesting one. Lorelei, she hasn't really been changed, but honestly has got slightly better just because of the people that are in the meta right now. The fact that her ultimate is so useful at protecting squishy carries, and with squishy carries being very prevalent in the mid lane, especially immobile squishy carries, I think Lorelei is starting to come back in as a top tier captain. Her B is also great at zoning in fights, and a lot of people don't sort of give enough precedence to that, so I think Lorelei is a really, really good pick that is starting to come up and working well. Lyra, with the recent buffs, I think has made her a top tier captain in general, so I think Lyra is definitely someone that you want to be considering playing in solo queue. Her heal is actually really strong now, and despite the fact that her B kind of still sucks, she still has enough presence in solo queue with her healing and how aggressive she can be with those portals to make her a top tier captain right now. Moving on, obviously a lot of people considering where's Lance given the buffs, and I think Lance is a very, very good captain. It's just a captain that is hard to use. He's someone that if you're very practiced at, is great, and I think you guys should consider. So if you want to get good at Lance, if you're a good Lance player, that makes him top tier. But for everybody, the sort of the run-of-the-mill solo queue player, I don't think Lance is a solid pick because he is hard to make work. The same with Churnwalker. I put Churnwalker in last time, but Churnwalker is still a really hard pick. You know, he is very mechanically skilled, so the very top tier players can make Churnwalker work very well. But mid to low tiers, you're better off with someone like Arden. And this is a pick that a lot of you might not have considered, but talking to a lot of the pros, they genuinely believe, especially in Europe, that Tony is a top-tier captain. He's also got more carry potential than someone like Arden, so if you get good at Tony and get good at Tony captain, it's much easier to carry from the captain role, because again, he's a little bit like Lance with a sort of a targeted CC ability, and is very, very good at ganking lanes, and also very hard to kill, so Tony in my top 4 captains. This is probably going to be a controversial top 4 for each role, but I want you guys to consider those picks and go and try them out in your solo queue and see how they work for you. There are a lot of picks just outside this top 4 that work really well. For instance, in the lane, Jewel is hovering around the sidelines, especially. In the mid lane, obviously, like I said, Samuel. There was the Alpha Koshka debate in the jungle, and like I said, Lance and Churnwalker are also very good in the captain roles. So there are people just outside these 4 that I think work well, but please feel free, go and try them and see how you feel. See you soon.